Welcome to the Chief of Anything podcast, in this four-tone Vierklang format with Catherine Woods and Dominic Klimek. Our Vierklang format talks about the interplay of purpose, vision, values and strategies, and about what happens to companies when we bring these four together. Here I hear firsthand how the Vierklang strategy has transformed companies and what I can expect from its implementation.
Good morning, Catherine.
Hello, Dominic.
How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic, thank you. How about you?
I'm feeling great, and we have a very exciting guest on our podcast today, Annemarie, the Managing Director of Heyl and Me. Hello, Annemarie.
Hello, both of you. I'm thrilled to be here.
We're also very excited to have you here. Annemarie, our listeners are surely eager to know who you are and what you do. Would you like to tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure, gladly. My name is Annemarie Heyl. I co-founded the company Heyl and Me 8 years ago. We are a company based in Hamburg. What we do is we accompany people during their fasting journeys in various ways. We primarily produce juices, fruit and vegetable juices for individual fasting programs that people can do at home. Exactly, we've been doing this for 8 years now. We currently have around 35 employees and our own production facility. It's really important to us that we produce what we offer, that we have control over the quality ourselves. It's a fundamental part of our values. So, we have our own production facility in the Altland area that we operate. Yes, we focus on various aspects of health.
Great, thank you for this introduction. You have gone through the whole Vierklang format, and I'm incredibly interested in knowing what initially led you want to focus on purpose, vision, values and strategies.
Well, I think this wave-like movement probably happens in every company, and it was the same for us. In the first 2 or 3 years, we were focused on what was happening today and maybe next week. If things were going well, we might think about the future in terms of a month. If things were going really well, we would set goals for a year. Then, as we reached 3 or 4 years in, we started regularly planning for horizons of 12 to 24 months. But for the past 3 or 4 years, we've realized that we've outgrown our infancy, and a short-term perspective in planning is no longer possible because the wheel we're turning has become too big, with too many people involved. Even the quantities we produce nowadays don't allow us to focus only on a 12-month horizon. The world out there doesn't permit it either. About 2 or 3 years ago, we started delving deeper into strategy. However, we initially began with the marketing strategy. We worked on the surface and examined how Heyl and Me was perceived from the outside. What were we communicating externally? Through this external perspective, we gradually peeled back the layers, and, I believe it took nearly 12 months, I approached Michael and said, "We need a structure behind this. We need to revisit our vision and mission. We need to reevaluate if they still align. And what is it that we want to achieve in the long term?" We realized internally that we needed someone from the outside to guide us. We definitely needed that external support because otherwise, we simply didn't allocate enough time to this matter. That's how it all started.
That sounds fantastic. We're always very curious about the before and after perspective, especially regarding the company's atmosphere. Could you describe what it was like before going through this process and how was it afterwards? What changed?
Well, I think I would even focus more on the way we worked rather than the atmosphere, although I can touch on that later. But primarily, it was about our work processes. Previously, we invested an incredible amount of time in meetings upon meetings related to OKR's objectives and key results, goals and strategies. We tried to build the entire system ourselves, investing an enormous amount of time. There was simply confusion. Who did we want to be? Where did we actually want to go? What did it mean for each individual employee? Their goals, which may come up in their performance reviews or development conversations. I believe there was just a lot of confusion. That was the situation beforehand. And now, we recently had our, let's say, closing and final meeting for the next 6 months, regarding the Vierklang process, especially the strategies. Afterward, there was a general consensus that everyone said, "This is great, everything falls into place now. There's more clarity. We know where we want to go with it. We're not at 100% yet, and that's totally fine, but we have reached about 85% clarity. Everyone knows what they're working on, why we're working on it, and where we want to go with it in the long run." Perhaps as an additional note, one significant change is that we are now asking the right questions. For example, we recently conducted a large-scale opinion survey, and over the years, we have often struggled with knowing what technical information we actually need. We are a 95% online-based company, collecting data on every single sale. That means we could analyze the most fantastic data, but sometimes we lack the right questions to ask. And now, it's easier for us because we have this roadmap, we know where we want to go, and we know the questions we want to answer along the way.
Thank you. So if I understand you correctly, you're saying that through purpose, a shared vision and shared values, in other words, how you want to work together, this has transformed the entire work experience, and single employees are no longer lost, but have a clear direction which has made them much more efficient.
I would say we are in the process. And I believe this process will continue for a few more months. But I can already see that we work in a simpler, more efficient manner because everyone knows where we want to go, where we come from, and who we are in the end. Like you just mentioned, a good key word is values. Last week, we started working more intensively with our defined values. We did exercises with the team where they had to answer when our defined values last made their work easier. And everyone could immediately provide examples. It's great because our goal is not to be asked about everything, such as what does Heyl and me do, what would Heyl and me do, or what strategic decision would Heyl and me make. Instead, a lot is found within the Vierklang process, especially within our values how we do things. And the more our employees are engaged with that, the easier it becomes, and the fewer questions we receive. Currently, I notice that people think in terms of our values and refer to them before asking me if it's okay, for example, to release an unsustainable product.
Fantastic. That sounds wonderful. So it seems like your workload in terms of the questions coming your way has significantly decreased, which is always valuable. And as you mentioned earlier, we're not aiming for 100%. I think it's important to reiterate that. The goal is to achieve those 85% in the beginning and then through reiteration and refinement, reach the 100%. In other words, we can adapt it to what is happening in the world around us.
Absolutely, yes. And perhaps to dive into that a bit further, as you just mentioned, it simplifies my work as well. It's not that I have less work, but I'm now focusing more on the topics that are truly relevant to me. So, currently, I'm more involved in strategy. Previously, I struggled with being too operational, as I had to make too many decisions, and certainly wanted to. Now, without even having to say anything, everyone is aware of how Heyl and me would act. The other aspect is that I'm no longer occupied with structural issues like how to define something or how to implement an OKR system. It's now a clear structure in place, and my focus is more on executing and ensuring that everyone understands it. Therefore, I think I'm exactly where I should be as a managing director at the moment.
And another question. You mentioned that you recently kicked off the next 6 months with the new strategies. What was different this time compared to 2 years ago? Or if this question is too comparative, what was easier this time with the strategy process, giving you a good feeling for 2023?
Firstly, we have all become much more confident in how we define goals. It took time, even though one would think that we should all be able to formulate smart goals. But it was great to have that external perspective and ongoing questioning. How do you do it? How do you achieve it? We have simply become better and faster at defining goals. I believe that each employee now understands the impact they have on the long-term vision. That has definitely changed as well, that everything is interconnected. The lower-level to-dos and key results are now all linked to our strategies. In other words, the system has become more cohesive as it is now a holistic system, rather than teams coming up with their own goals and strategies that have nothing to do with the company's overall strategy. Undoubtedly, point 3 is that everyone is generally more informed about where we are heading, whether it's the warehouse or the production department. Even if not everyone participated in the Vierklang workshop, the information flows throughout the entire company. That's a positive aspect.
So employees or new hires who were not part of the workshop, how do you onboard them? Is the Vierklang so embedded in the company culture that they automatically become aware of it?
Well, we're still in the process of implementation in that regard. It took a bit of time for us after the workshop. We needed to finalize everything, review the strategies, and so on. It did take a bit of time for us because internally, we didn't invest enough time in it. I think it could have had more speed. And in terms of onboarding and even the offboarding process, it affects both aspects. How do our values come into play there? How do we communicate who we are and where we want to go? We're currently still in the process of implementing that. But the goal is that every applicant, in the end, goes through the values so that there's a fit from both sides. I've always incorporated that to some extent, but more with individual questions. I believe we can create a different and cool system in that regard. So the whole values aspect will definitely be integrated into the recruiting process, and we now incorporate the Vierklang into almost every meeting, especially larger ones where everyone is present. So, new employees will encounter the Vierklang at the latest during those meetings, and it's also included in our onboarding documents. We have a document that everyone reads at the beginning, and it's incorporated there as well.
That sounds fascinating. When you say you incorporated the Vierklang into your meetings, what does that look like? Is it displayed on a slide, or someone reads it out loud at the beginning of the meeting? Or is it presented in a different way? How should we envision it?
Exactly, it's displayed on a slide, always at the beginning of each presentation, and we go around in a circle. By the way, we've been doing that since the workshop. We no longer specify who should speak. Instead, we let it flow naturally through the participants. I've noticed that the more often everyone reads a different passage from the Vierklang, the more they feel responsible for each value, the vision, and so on, because it's not solely the task of the management team, but something we all need to live together. That's why we take turns reading it aloud.
Wonderful. That's how we do it as well. It seems to work just as well for you as it does for us. I have one more question. Earlier you mentioned that not everyone was involved in the workshop and the development of the Vierklang. Despite not everyone being involved, there was still a significant amount of people participating. From your perspective as part of the management team, how was it to work with so many people on the Vierklang and ultimately on the strategy?
I have to say that during the process, I sometimes questioned whether this was the right approach for us. Gathering this collective knowledge and seeing what comes out when everyone shares their thoughts on what Heyl and me represents. Looking back, especially regarding purpose, vision, and values, I found it extremely beneficial. I can say with 100% certainty that I would do it the same way again. Especially when it comes to values, I found it incredible to see how aligned everyone was and how quickly those 4 values emerged, and everyone could identify with them. And that's what's happening in our day-to-day operations, because it wasn't imposed on everyone that they have to be fully in agreement. Not everyone agrees 100%, of course. Some individuals may have specific aspects where they don't fully align, but for the most part, they do. So, for these three aspects, purpose, vision, and values, I would definitely go through the same process again. However, I must admit that with the topic of strategies, I've thought about it more in hindsight. We struggled the most when it came to publishing them because the databases, which naturally influences the definition of strategies, had to align. As the management team, I believe we should have given it more thought beforehand. What is the data? What is the market size? What is realistically achievable? Or adjusting them afterward? That's what we did. We took the strategies and revisited them as the management team, aligning them with the knowledge we could generate about the market. That was completely fine in the end. But I think it varies for every company. In our case, because the market we're currently operating in is relatively new, not all the necessary data was available. And that's understandable.
Wonderful.
What I find fascinating is that my boss used to tell me, Dominic, the last thing you want is an employee you have to drag along. You want him to run on their own. And it sounds to me that with purpose, vision, and values, you have managed to get your employees going in one direction together, simply through the workshop and the subsequent integration. And then with the strategy, you realized, okay, we want to make some adjustments. And I think that that's the essential value of the Vierklang model because it incorporates this flexibility. Even if you had said that one of the values doesn't fit anymore or that things have changed, you can always readjust and make it fit. And at the same time, you are leveraging the swarm intelligence of the whole company, which naturally makes everyone feel fully involved and they run on their own because they can say, I contributed to this. Additionally, as the management team, you have the ability to take responsibility because it's a collaborative process. But ultimately, the responsibility lies with the management team, so you can make adjustments and steer the company in the direction that you want. That's why I think it's great how you have implemented it as a shining example. Congratulations! I'm excited to see where you will be in 5 years.
We are too.
Great. Then let's do a quick check-in before we wrap up. How are you doing, Annemarie?
I'm doing well. It's a Monday, the start of the week, and I'm curious to see what this week will bring.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Dominic, what's your one-word checkout?
My one-word checkout is motivated.
Motivated. Wonderful. That's the word I was going to use. And we want to have different words in our checkout. So I'm going to go with impressed. I'm very impressed by what Annemarie and Heyl and me have achieved with the Vierklang, and I wish you and the team all the best with it. I'm glad you had such a great start, and hopefully we'll see and hear from each other again soon. Take care. Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Ciao!
That's it for today with Vierklang Strategy Coaching in our Chief of Anything podcast. If you would like to discover the impact of Vierklang Strategy Coaching for your company, then simply click on the link in the description and get in touch with us.